The world can collapse in just one sentence. They say 40 is the new 30, but that's a lie magazines use to sell skin cream. The truth is, 40 is when you become invisible. And for my husband, it was when I became too old. He didn't know that too old also means classic, and antiques are always valuable. He just didn't know my value was $2.5 million. My name is Eliza. I am 40 years old, and I was sitting in a suffocatingly expensive Italian restaurant in Denver, Colorado. The linen tablecloth was so stiff it could have drawn blood. This was not a celebration. Marcus had called it an important discussion, but the sterile air and the way he avoided my eyes screamed intervention. This was a meeting he had scheduled, not a dinner he had planned. He was 42, and tonight, he looked every bit the part of a man trying desperately not to be. Marcus poked at his calamari with a fork, his brow furrowed as if the appetizer had personally offended him. "This is rubber," he announced to the empty space beside him. "You pay this much. You expect them to at least get the basics right. And this lighting," he waved a dismissive hand at the tasteful low-lit chandelier. "It's like dining in a morgue." I said nothing. I was a senior project manager at Innovent Solutions. My job was to manage complex systems, budgets in the millions, and the volatile personalities of engineers. I could handle a husband in a temporary tailspin. I smoothed the napkin in my lap, assuming this was just another flare-up of his midlife crisis, another rambling monologue I would have to endure before we could go home. He sighed, pushing the plate away. "That's the whole problem. The basics. We've lost them. Here it comes," I thought. "I need a fresh start," he said, and his eyes finally met mine. They were cold, devoid of the man I had married. "I need youthful energy. My work requires it." His work. His investment consulting firm, a company with no clients, no office, and no product. A phantom entity I knew was funded entirely by my salary. It was a vanity project I had allowed, a costly indulgence to soothe his fragile ego. "Things aren't gelling. Marcus," I said, my project manager voice taking over. "That's normal. Maybe we need to look at your business plan again." "No, Eliza," he cut me off, and there was a finality in his tone that chilled me. "You're not listening. I'm talking about us." He slid a manila folder across the starched linen. It wasn't thick, but it was heavy. It landed perfectly square in front of my bread plate. My hands felt numb. I didn't need to open it. The small purple stamp of a notary public was visible in the corner. He had been planning this for weeks, maybe months, while I was coordinating software rollouts and approving invoices. He didn't wait for me to look inside. He delivered the killing blow. "I look at you. He said, his voice lowering to a confidential whisper that felt louder than a shout. "And I just see the end. You're 40. You're too old for me." The words hung in the air, thick and poisoned, in that exact moment, as the blood drained from my face. A burst of laughter and high-pitched singing erupted from the table across the room. A young woman, all glittering skin and bright eyes, blew out a forest of candles on a cake. The table cheered. A man I couldn't see yelled, "Happy 25th, baby." The contrast was a physical assault. Humiliation, sharp and acidic, rose in my throat. I looked at Marcus, at the man who had shared my bed for 15 years, and felt absolutely nothing. The panic, the grief, the rage, it was all absent. There was only a vast, cold, empty space inside my chest. I finally understood what it meant to be in shock. I folded my hands on the table. My voice, when it came out, was steady. It was the same voice I used to ask engineers if they had met their deadlines. "You want the house?" It was a rental, a high-end apartment in Cherry Creek, but it was in my name. Marcus actually smirked. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. "I want everything," he said, as if ordering from the menu. "The car, the accounts, everything we built. The law is on my side. I've checked. He stood up, adjusting the cuffs of his expensive and unpaid-for shirt. He threw his own napkin onto the table, a final gesture of contempt. You can get the check. He turned and walked out of the restaurant, past the laughing 25-year-old, and out into the Denver night. I was left alone at the table, with the rubbery calamari, the notary's stamp, and a bill for $300. I paid the bill. My hand didn't shake as I signed the receipt. The drive back to our Cherry Creek apartment was automatic. My body knew the route even as my mind floated somewhere above the city, detached and cold. The front door was unlocked. That wasn't unusual. Marcus was careless, but the silence that greeted me was different. It was hollow. He was gone. It wasn't just him. It was his things. The ugly modernist sculpture he'd bought. His entire collection of self-help business books. The espresso machine he used twice a year. Blank squares on the walls showed where his art had been. He had been efficient. This was a man who had packed his bags before he even went to dinner to deliver the execution. I walked past the gaping holes in our life and into the kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anything. I just sat down at the granite island, the one I had picked out, and stared at the small pile of mail I'd ignored for the past few days. Junk, bills, a political flyer. Underneath it all was a thick, cream-colored envelope. It felt heavy, like it was made of linen, not paper. The postmark was from Reno, Nevada. It had been sitting there for 3 days. I had been too busy managing a software integration to open my mail. Too busy being a wife. I slid it open with my thumbnail. The letterhead was embossed Thorne, Davenport, and Fry, attorneys at law. My eyes scanned the dense legal text, but a few words jumped out. Grief. Condolences. Estate of Arthur Vance. Last will and testament. Arthur. I barely remembered him. He was my grandmother's brother, a figure of family legend, a reclusive miner who had vanished into the Nevada desert decades ago. I had met him exactly once, at a family funeral when I was 10. He had smelled of dust and tobacco and had given me a strange, unpolished rock that I'd lost by the end of the day. According to this letter, Arthur had passed away, and his will was simple. He had no other family. He was leaving his entire estate, the sum total of his hermetic life, to his only living relative, to me, Eliza. I looked at the clock on the oven. It glowed 3:14 a.m. The numbness was still there, but a strange electric curiosity was buzzing beneath it. I picked up my phone. I dialed the number on the letterhead, fully expecting to get a recorded message. A man answered on the second ring. His voice was gravelly, wide awake. Thorne speaking. Mr. Thorne, my name is Eliza. You sent me a letter about Arthur Vance. Ms. Davies, he said, and there was no surprise in his voice, just a weary confirmation. I've been expecting your call. I'm sorry for your loss. Your great-uncle was a particular man. I don't understand, I stammered. The will is ironclad, Thorne said. Arthur wasn't just a miner. Ms. Davies. He was a very smart miner. He owned the land. He held on to the mineral rights. He invested, quietly, for 50 years. His portfolio is extensive, very safe. I sat up straighter. The emptiness in the apartment felt different now. What are we talking about? I asked. Thorne paused. After liquidation of the primary assets and factoring in the current market value of the real estate holdings, the total estate is valued at approximately $2.5 million. $2.5 million. I gripped the edge of the counter. The granite felt cold. Oh my God, I whispered. Yes, Thorne said, and his voice became sharp, urgent. Which brings us to the important part. Ms. Davies, when did your uncle pass away? The letter said, 4 weeks ago. He finished for me. He died 4 weeks ago. Your inheritance, all of it, was legally yours before this morning. Are you married? The air left my lungs. My husband just left me. Tonight. He served me with divorce papers. There was a long silence on the line. Ms. Davies, Thorne said, and his voice was now deadly serious. This is Colorado. It's a marital property state, but inheritance is separate. If it is treated as separate, this money, this $2.5 million, is yours. It is not, and never was, your husband's. He cannot know about it. Not a word. Not a cent. Do you understand me? I looked around the empty, ransacked apartment. I saw the empty space where his stupid sculpture used to be. I heard his voice in my head. You're too old for me. The numbness that had frozen me at the restaurant didn't just disappear. It crystallized. It hardened, turning from a state of shock into a weapon. Yes, I said to Mr. Thorne. I understand perfectly. I hung up the phone. The grief didn't come. The tears didn't come. What came instead was a terrifying, crystal-clear focus. He thought I was old. He thought I was worthless. He had no idea. I didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., I emailed my boss at Innovent Solutions and told him I had a severe stomach flu. It was the first sick day I'd taken in 3 years. Then, I began my work. My first call was to Mr. Thorne, who was already in his office in Reno. I need it liquid, and I need it silent. I told him. He understood. By 9 a.m., I was downtown, but not at my usual bank. I walked into a branch of a major national bank Marcus had always called too corporate. It was perfect. I sat with a private banker in a quiet office, my phone on speaker, as Mr. Thorne guided me through the process. We established a revocable trust, the Arthur Vance Trust, with me as the sole trustee. Then, I opened a new personal checking account, linked only to the trust. The initial wire transfer from the estate would be in my new account by noon. My next stop was a generic mail solutions store. I rented a private P.O. box under my name. This would be the new address for Mr. Thorne, for the bank, for my entire new life. The apartment in Cherry Creek was compromised. By the afternoon, I was back in that apartment, but it was no longer my home. It was an operating base. I sat on the floor he had taken the good office chair with my laptop. I changed every password, banking, social media, email, my 401k, the airline miles. I enabled two-factor authentication on every single account, linking it only to my phone, the one he didn't know how to track. I was building a digital fortress, brick by methodical brick. My last action of the day was the most important. I needed a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I had spent the afternoon researching. I needed a shark. Her name was Mrs. Holland. Her office was in a sleek, imposing glass tower, and her reputation in Denver was terrifying. She was known for one thing, taking everything. She saw me at 4 p.m., squeezing me in. Mrs. Holland was a woman in her 60s with perfectly coiffed silver hair, eyes that missed nothing, and a suit that probably cost more than my car. I didn't cry. I didn't get emotional. I laid out the facts. My husband, Marcus, served me papers last night. He is claiming he needs everything for his business. He called me too old and left me with the dinner check. Mrs. Holland listened, her face impassive, as if I were describing a minor traffic jam. And, I said, leaning forward, 3 days ago, I inherited $2.5 million from a great-uncle in Nevada. My husband does not know. For the first time, a flicker of interest appeared in Mrs. Holland's eyes. A small, cold smile touched her lips. Well, she said, that is a delightful complication. She explained the law, her voice crisp and sharp. In Colorado, inheritance is separate property. It is yours, and yours alone. It does not become marital property unless you make it marital property. As long as you do not put 1 single cent of that money into a joint account, as long as you do not use it to pay his debts or fund his lifestyle, he will never smell it. He is not entitled to it. Our job is to make sure he never even knows to ask. She agreed to take my case. As I was preparing to leave, she handed me a checklist. I need full financial disclosures. everything. The last 5 years, bank statements, credit reports, all of it. That night, I began to pull the data. I logged into my credit monitoring service, the one I used to check my score, and that's when I saw it. An anomaly. A credit card I didn't recognize. It was under my name, Eliza Davies, my social security number, but I had never applied for it. The account was 6 months old. The balance was $30,000. I clicked on the transaction history. Charges for business development at high-end steakhouses, software subscriptions I had never heard of, hotel charges for a conference in Aspen, one he'd told me his investors had paid for. He had used my pristine credit to fund his fantasy life, his phantom company. He hadn't just left me. He had been robbing me in broad daylight for months. My first instinct was to call the bank, to scream fraud, to shut it down, but the project manager in me, the cold, calculating woman who was now in charge, took over. I put the phone down. No, I would not close the card. I would not report the fraud. I would watch, like a hawk. I would watch every dollar, every charge, every location. Marcus had just handed me a leash, and he had no idea he was already wearing the collar. The first email from Marcus arrived 2 days after I'd hired Mrs. Holland. It was sent to my work address. A blatant power move, as if to remind me he knew where I was. "Elle," it began. No pleasantries. "We need to accelerate this. I've had my lawyer draw up the asset split. We sell the apartment, split the proceeds, and we need to liquidate the joint stocks immediately. I need my half to fund my new ventures. Let's not drag this out and make it ugly." Make it ugly. He had set our life on fire and was now complaining about the smoke. The stocks he was referring to were, of course, my stocks, earned through my company, bonuses from projects I had managed. He had contributed nothing. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and logged into the credit card account. The $30,000 balance was still there, but there was a new charge, posted just last night, $1,200. The vendor, Sienna's Table. The charge was categorized as business entertainment. Sienna's Table. It sounded young, trendy. I typed the name into a search engine. A sleek website popped up first. All dark wood, craft cocktails, and artfully plated dishes. It was one of the new hotspots downtown. The About page featured a glowing profile of the owner and executive chef Sienna, a 24-year-old culinary prodigy. Of course, I clicked the Instagram link. The feed was a curated stream of food, ambition, and youthful energy. And then I found her, Sienna. She was beautiful, in that effortless way only 24-year-olds can be. I kept scrolling, my thumb moving with a detached, methodical rhythm. I scrolled past pictures of food, pictures of her staff, pictures of glowing reviews. I scrolled back 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 4 months, and there he was. Marcus. It wasn't just one picture, it was a half dozen, sprinkled over months. Marcus at a charity gala, his arm possessively around Sienna's waist. Marcus and Sienna laughing over cocktails, his eyes full of the adoration I hadn't seen in years. Marcus, in a candid shot, kissing her by the restaurant's kitchen door. The caption, posted 4 months ago, read, "My #1 supporter. He believes in my dream." He wasn't having a midlife crisis. He was living a parallel life. He hadn't just met her. He had been with her while I was working overtime to pay for his phantom consulting firm. I felt a cold sickness, a different kind of humiliation, but I kept scrolling. Then I saw it. A photo from 6 weeks ago. It was a close-up of Sienna, holding a glass of champagne, toasting the camera. She looked ecstatic, and around her neck, hanging against her glittering skin, was a gold locket on a delicate chain. I stopped breathing. I zoomed in until the image was grainy. There was no mistake. The 3 small seed pearls, the etched willow tree. It was my grandmother's necklace. It was the only valuable thing I had from her side of the family. Marcus had said it was lost during our move 3 years ago. He'd blamed the movers, He'd told me I was being sentimental and that it was just a thing. He had packed those boxes himself. This wasn't a breakup. This wasn't an affair. This was a calculated, methodical theft. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had plundered my life. He had stolen my past, piece by piece, and gifted it to his future. The rage that filled me was so pure, so cold. It was almost serene. The pain was gone, burned away. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Mrs. Holland. I called my best friend. Chloe answered on the first ring. "Eliza, you've been a ghost. Everything okay?" "Not really," I said, my voice perfectly even. Chloe wasn't just a friend. She was a forensic accountant who worked as a white-collar crime investigator. She hunted men like Marcus for a living. "I need a favor," I said, "and it's a big one. Off the books." "I'm listening." "I need you to find everything you can on Marcus's investment company. And I'm not talking about credit card debt. I want to know about his investors. I want to know about his bank transfers. I'm looking for fraud, Chloe. And I think it's there." There was a pause. "Give me 48 hours," Chloe said. "I'll find it." My first official act as a woman on the verge of war was to meet with Mrs. Holland. I brought her the credit card statements. She looked at the $30,000 balance, the list of charges, and she actually smiled. "This," she said, "is a gift." I told her about Chloe, my friend, the forensic accountant. "I think there's more," I said. "He's funding his company, but I don't know with what." "Then we need to buy your friend some time," Mrs. Holland said, already turning to her computer. "We shall oblige his request to accelerate things, just not in the way he hopes." Her response to his lawyer was a masterpiece of corporate politeness and legal obstruction. "We were," she wrote, "more than happy to expedite the dissolution. To do so, we simply required a few items for a full and transparent accounting. First, complete bank statements from all personal and business accounts for the past 10 years. Second, we required a full third-party appraisal of all shared marital assets, including," she wrote, "Mr. Davies's extensive art collection." I knew his art collection consisted of 5 cheap framed prints he'd bought from a website. The appraisal process alone would take weeks to schedule, all to determine the value of about $50 in canvas. It was a beautiful, petty, and perfectly legal delay. The explosion was immediate. Marcus couldn't wait weeks. He needed cash, and he needed it now. His business was a house of cards, and Sienna was an expensive girlfriend. His calls started. I had set his number to go straight to voicemail, and the little notification icon became a constant presence. I would play them in the evening, my new ritual, sitting in the half-empty apartment. The first ones were annoyed. "Eliza, this is ridiculous. 10 years of statements. What are you playing at? Tell your lawyer to back off?" The next ones were desperate. "Elle, please, you're costing me money. I have investors. I have deadlines. You're sabotaging me. Just let me have the stocks. You can keep the apartment. Just call me." Finally came the rage. The real Marcus. "You vicious woman. You are doing this just to hurt me. After everything I did for you, you will not get away with this. You are a bitter old. You will pay for this." I saved every single message. When the calls didn't work, he escalated. He came to my office. I was in the middle of a project review, standing at a whiteboard, when our receptionist's voice came over my desk phone, tight with panic. "Eliza, you need to come to the lobby. Now, your husband is here." I walked out of the conference room and down the hall. I could hear him before I saw him, his voice echoing in the glass and steel atrium of Innovent Solutions. "I know she's in there." He was shouting at Jan, our poor receptionist. "This is my company too. My money is tied up here. Eliza, get down here. You can't hide from me." Frank, our head of security and a man built like a refrigerator, was already moving in, his hand on Marcus's arm. "Sir, you need to lower your voice. This is a private building." Marcus saw me as I stepped off the elevator. His face was blotchy and red. "There you are, you bitch! You're trying to ruin me. You're freezing my assets." My colleagues were frozen, staring. Frank didn't hesitate. "That's it. You're out." He and another guard grabbed Marcus by the arms. Marcus was still screaming, "She's stealing from me," as they physically escorted him, kicking, out the revolving glass doors. The lobby was dead silent. Everyone was looking at me. I turned, walked back to the elevator, and went back to my desk. 10 minutes later, my boss's assistant called. "Mr. Harrison wants to see you." I walked to the corner office, my heart hammering. I was expecting to be reprimanded, maybe even fired. Public disruption, endangering the company's image. Mr. Harrison, a man in his late 50s who had just finalized his own brutal divorce 6 months ago, waved me to a chair. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. "Mr. Harrison," I started, "I am so sorry about that. I promise it will never—" He held up a hand. "Eliza, don't." He leaned back in his leather chair. "I saw the security feed. He's trying to get you fired." I blinked. "What?" "I've seen it before. He's a desperate man. He's making a scene, not to get to you, but to get to your employer. He wants you unemployed, panicked, and willing to take any settlement just to make it stop. It's a classic and pathetic move." He looked at me, a long, appraising look. "You're one of my best project managers. You're not getting fired." He leaned forward. "Take a week, paid leave, go see your lawyer, get your affairs in order, and send me a photo of him. He's not allowed in this building again. Go solve your problem. Eliza, your job will be here when you're done." I walked out of his office, the adrenaline fading, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. Marcus thought he was isolating me. He thought he was burning my world down. He was wrong. He was just showing me who my allies were. I used my paid week off not to hide, but to fly. I took a first-class flight to Reno, Nevada. I met with Mr. Thorne in his quiet, wood-paneled office. I signed the final papers, and when I walked out, the $2.5 million was officially mine, sitting in a trust account at a bank Marcus had never heard of, under a name he would never think to look for. I was a ghost with a fortune. I was in the airport lounge, waiting for my flight back to Denver, when Chloe called. Her voice was sharp, electric with the thrill of the hunt. "I found it, Elle," she said. "Oh, I found it. Tell me," I said, sipping a complimentary water. "Your husband isn't a businessman. He's a con artist. His investment firm is a baby Ponzi scheme. He has 3 investors, a dentist, a retiree, and a software guy. He's been using the dentist's money to pay fake dividends to the retiree. It's amateur, sloppy, and highly illegal." I felt a cold, satisfying click, like a lock falling into place. "That's good, Chloe. That's very good. Oh, it gets better," she said, and I could hear her smile. "Guess where he's been conducting his fraudulent wire transfers from? His home office?" "Nope. I ran the IP addresses from his email correspondence with the investors. They match the server at Innovent Solutions. He's been using your company's network to run his scam, probably while you were in meetings, earning the actual money. He's put you, your reputation, and your employer at massive risk." I was so calm it was almost frightening. "Thank you, Chloe. You've just given me the leverage I need." "There's one more thing," she said, her voice dropping. "He's been applying for loans, all over town. He's desperate for a capital injection. I found a business loan application with a regional bank. It was approved." "He got a loan?" I asked, confused. "With his credit." "No," Chloe said softly. "Not with his credit. The application was in 2 names, yours and his." I went very, very still. "Chloe, I never signed a loan application." "I know," she said. "He forged your signature. Eliza. He applied for a $100,000 business loan, and he faked your name on the dotted line. The money was due to be disbursed in a week." I hung up and immediately called Mrs. Holland. I walked her through everything: the Ponzi scheme, the use of my company's IP address, and finally, the forged loan application. Mrs. Holland was silent for a full 10 seconds. When she finally spoke, her voice was full of professional, icy rage. "We have him," she said simply. "That's not a divorce matter. That's bank fraud. It's a federal crime. He could go to prison for 10 years, easily. One call from me to the bank and the U.S. Attorney's Office, and his life, as he knows it, is over." I had the choice right there. I could pick up the phone, make the call, and send the man who had stolen my grandmother's necklace to a federal prison. I could destroy him. I thought about it. I pictured him in a courtroom, his arrogant smirk finally gone. I pictured him in a prison uniform, the youthful energy he craved replaced by concrete walls. And I realized it wasn't what I wanted. Prison was an ending. It was a form of martyrdom he could blame me for. It was too fast, too clean. "Eliza," Mrs. Holland asked, sensing my hesitation. "What are your instructions?" I looked out the window of the airport lounge, at the planes taking off into the night. "Do nothing," I said. "What?" "Don't call the bank. Not yet. Let the loan sit there. Instead, I want you to draft a new divorce agreement. Eliza, this is your chance. We can—" "I know," I interrupted, my voice flat and final. "Draft a new agreement. Make it generous. Tell his lawyer we're ready to settle. Tell him I'm willing to make concessions to get this over with." Mrs. Holland was baffled. "Concessions after he forged your name after he committed a felony?" "Yes," I said. "I don't want him in jail, Mrs. Holland. I want him to live with what he's done. I want him to know, every single day, what he's lost." The bait was set. Now. I just had to wait for the rat to take it. Mrs. Holland, though clearly bewildered by my strategy, was a consummate professional. She drafted the new settlement agreement. It was a masterpiece of faux generosity. The offer of settlement, as she titled it, was sent to Marcus's lawyer the next morning. The terms were simple. First, I, Eliza Davies, would agree to assume full responsibility for the $30,000 credit card debt, classifying it as a shared marital expense. Second, I would sign over the title to the leased sports car, the one Marcus drove, the one that was entirely in my name and paid for from my salary. Third, I would waive all claims to my vested stock options from Innovent Solutions, a portfolio currently valued at approximately $50,000, allowing him to claim the full amount as business capital. In exchange for this windfall, I asked for only two things. One, that he vacate the apartment immediately and I would assume the lease. Two, that he sign a permanent, binding no-contact order. Mrs. Holland told me the response from Marcus's lawyer was almost instantaneous. He called her, his voice dripping with triumphant disbelief. He couldn't believe his luck. I could picture the scene in his cheap, rented office. Marcus, pacing and gloating, finally seeing the victory he thought he was entitled to. They both saw it. They saw the public humiliation at my office. They saw the immediate, desperate offer to settle. They didn't see a trap. They saw a woman who was broken. They believed my boss had fired me, that I was panicked, without resources, and desperate to end the fight. They believed their bullying had worked. Marcus, in his arrogance, couldn't just accept the victory. He had to rub it in. His lawyer called Mrs. Holland back an hour later with a final, non-negotiable condition. "My client has endured significant emotional distress," his lawyer said, the smugness radiating through the phone. "Due to Mrs. Davies's vindictive delays and attempts to harm his business." Mrs. Holland's knuckles were white on her desk when she told me this. "He wants a letter," she said, her voice tight with contempt. "A formal letter of apology. From you. To him. Apologizing for the emotional distress you have caused him during this process. He wants it signed, notarized, and delivered to him at the final signing, or the deal is off." This, finally, was the thing that broke Mrs. Holland's icy calm. "This is beyond the pale, Eliza." This is a complete narcissistic fantasy. I will not allow you to be humiliated like this. We will call the bank. We will—" "No," I said. I was perfectly calm. "It's fine. Fine, Eliza. He is demanding an apology from the woman he defrauded." "I know," I said. I looked out the window of my apartment, at the city I was about to own. "It's a small price to pay. Write the letter, Mrs. Holland. Write whatever he wants to hear. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I regret everything. Give him exactly what he wants." Mrs. Holland stared at me, her expression a mix of horror and dawning, confused respect. She didn't understand my game, but she was starting to trust that I had one. "As you wish," she said. Finally, we set the date, the final signing. 1 week. The signing was scheduled for 10 a.m. at Mrs. Holland's office. Her conference room was on the top floor, with a floor-to-ceiling window that offered a stunning panoramic view of the Denver skyline. When I was shown in, they were already there. Marcus, his lawyer, and a young woman I recognized instantly, Sienna. They were holding hands over the polished mahogany table. Marcus looked impossibly smug, like a king holding court. Sienna was even more beautiful in person, glowing with youth, and with something else. Her hand was resting on her stomach, a small, barely there curve that was clearly, intentionally, being displayed. She was pregnant. So that was it. The reason for the rush. The reason for his desperation. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a dynasty he was building. A detail I hadn't known, but it changed nothing. They both looked up as I entered, clearly expecting to see the broken, fired, weeping woman Marcus had described. I was not that woman. I had spent my week off well. I wore a custom-tailored navy blue suit that had cost more than his car. My hair was perfect. My makeup was flawless. I looked. I knew. Not a day over 40, and not a dollar under 3 million. I projected nothing but cool, expensive, lethal competence. Marcus's smirk faltered. Just for a second. Sienna's eyes narrowed, a flicker of female assessment, and then jealousy. "Eliza," Marcus said, recovering his arrogance. "Glad you could make it. Let's get this over with." I said nothing. I simply sat down opposite him, next to Mrs. Holland, and placed my hands on the table. The next 20 minutes were a silent, methodical execution. His lawyer would explain a document, and I would sign the car title, the stock transfer, the assumption of debt. My signature was clean and steady on every page. Finally, his lawyer pushed the last document in front of Marcus. "And this," he said, "is the notarized letter of apology from Mrs. Davies." Marcus picked it up, his eyes scanning the page. I watched his chest swell with triumph. He was reading the words Mrs. Holland had crafted, the words I had approved. He read the lines about his supposed emotional distress and the regrettable delays. He actually smiled, a full, arrogant baring of teeth. "This is acceptable," he said, tossing the letter onto the table like a finished napkin. He picked up the pen and, with a flourish, signed the final page of the divorce decree. "Done," he said, capping the pen. "Almost," Mrs. Holland said, her voice cutting through the smug silence. She slid a new, slim folder from her briefcase and passed it across the table to Marcus's lawyer. His lawyer frowned. "What's this?" "The agreement is finalized. Everything is signed." "That is a courtesy notice," Mrs. Holland said, her voice as cold as the glass window. "It's a notification of our decision not to pursue prosecution against your client for bank fraud." Marcus's smile froze. What the hell is she talking about? What fraud? His lawyer opened the folder. His face, which had been so arrogant, turned to a pasty, sickly white as he read the single page inside. "What is it?" Marcus demanded, grabbing the paper. "This," Mrs. Holland said, "is a copy of a $100,000 business loan application, submitted to a regional bank, in both your name and your wife's, except," as you can see from the attached affidavit from a handwriting expert. Mrs. Davies's signature is a forgery, a rather clumsy one. At that, Marcus stared at the paper, all the color draining from his face. "What?" Sienna whispered, her hand tightening on his arm. "Marcus, the generous agreement you just signed. Mr. Davies." Mrs. Holland continued, her voice relentless, "was not a sign of weakness. It was an act of mercy. The 50,000 in stocks, the 30,000 in debt, the car. That was my client's price for her silence. The deal was that in exchange for you signing the divorce, she would not call the U.S. attorney's office and have you arrested for a felony. My client's kindness, sir, not her weakness, is what just saved you from a 10-year prison sentence." Sienna's hand recoiled from Marcus's arm as if he were suddenly radioactive. Her face was a mask of pure terror. "Prison," she choked out. "Marcus, what did you do?" She wasn't looking at a successful investor. She was looking at a common criminal. She had not signed up for this. Sienna scrambled to her feet, knocking her chair back with a scrape that echoed in the stunned silence. Her face was pale with rage and fear. "You lied to me," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You told me you were clean. You told me she was the evil one, that she was trying to ruin you. Sienna, baby, listen to me," Marcus pleaded, reaching for her. "She's twisting it. It's just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," she spat, her eyes flashing between the loan application and Marcus. "Bank fraud prison. I am not having a baby with a fraud." "I'm not tying my life to a criminal." She grabbed her purse from the floor and, without a backward glance, stormed out of the conference room, slamming the door behind her. "Sienna!" Marcus lunged from his chair, his lawyer putting a hand out to stop him. But Marcus brushed it aside. He made it 2 steps toward the door before my voice, calm and clear, cut through his panic. "Oh, Marcus, you dropped this." It was the first time I had spoken directly to him since entering the room. He froze, his hand on the doorknob. He turned slowly, his face a mask of confusion and desperation. My hand was resting on the table. I uncurled my fingers, revealing the small gold locket with the 3 seed pearls. "I believe this is yours," I said. Or, it was hers. It's so hard to keep track. I gave the necklace a gentle push. It slid across the polished mahogany, glinting in the morning sun, coming to a perfect final stop right in front of his signed copy of the divorce decree. He stared at it. He knew what it was. The color, which had drained from his face, now returned in a dark, blotchy red. "And just so we're clear," I continued, my voice conversational, as if discussing the weather, "I did have a chat with your investors, the dentist and the retiree, specifically. They were fascinated to learn how a Ponzi scheme actually works. They had no idea they were the stars of their very own. I believe Chloe, my friend, called it amateur and sloppy. They are pooling their resources to hire a lawyer. The SEC will be in touch. I imagine they'll be very interested in the wire transfers you made using my company's IP address." His jaw dropped. He wasn't just looking at a divorce. He was looking at total, absolute, multi-front annihilation. He finally understood. I hadn't come to the table to fight him for scraps. I hadn't been tricked or bullied into signing. I had come to watch him sign his own confession. I hadn't destroyed him. I had simply stepped aside and given him enough rope to hang himself, his business, and his new life. He turned on me, his hands clenching into fists. The desperation was gone, replaced by a pure, sputtering rage. "How?" he hissed, his voice raw. "How could you afford this? The lawyers, the investigators. You. You gave me the stocks. You gave me the money. You." He stopped. His eyes darted from my face to my suit, to Mrs. Holland, and then back to me. He was seeing, for the first time, the calm, unbothered woman in the room. He was seeing the woman who had just let $80,000 in assets walk out the door without flinching. He was seeing the woman sipping from a glass of mineral water as if she didn't have a care in the world. The realization hit him like a physical blow. It was a slow, dawning horror that spread across his features. "You," he whispered, the word catching in his throat. "You have money. You had money all along." He stared at me, all the arrogance and rage gone, replaced by a raw, hollow-eyed panic. He looked pathetic. He looked like the man he truly was, a shell, empty and desperate, all of his borrowed confidence stripped away. "Elle, please," he whimpered, and the sound of my name on his lips was repulsive. He was pleading. "Eliza, the baby, Sienna, please. You can't just leave me with nothing. You can't do this." I stood up slowly. I didn't need to rush. I calmly buttoned the single button of my custom-tailored suit, smoothing the dark navy wool over my hips. I looked down at him, this crumpled, begging man. "You were right about one thing, Marcus," I said, and my voice was quiet, not a shout, but a clean, sharp blade. "I am 40. I am too old." I watched his eyes flicker, a small, stupid spark of hope, as if he thought I was agreeing with him. "I'm too old to play your games," I continued. "I'm too old to fund your pathetic, childish lies. I am far, far too old to give a single damn about what you think of me. You didn't leave me because I was old. Marcus, you left me because you're a child, and you were terrified of a grown woman." I turned my back on him, a final, complete dismissal. "Mrs. Holland," I said, walking toward the door, "I believe we are finished here." I had my hand on the polished chrome handle when his voice, no longer a plea but a strangled, furious scream, erupted behind me. "You won't get away with this. You hid assets. That's what this is. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to take you back to court. How much do you have? How much did you hide?" I stopped. I did not turn around. I would never, ever turn around for him again. I faced the door, the bright sunlight of my new life visible through the glass at the end of the hall. I spoke, not to him, but to the air in front of me. "My Uncle Arthur in Reno passed away 4 weeks ago. He left me his entire estate." I let the silence hang for one perfect beat, and then I delivered the final, killing blow. $2.5 million. From behind me, there was a sound I will never forget. It was not a word. It was a strangled, hollow gasp, the sound of a man's entire soul being ripped from his body as he realized, at that exact moment, the true astronomical scale of what he had thrown away. I smiled, just for myself. I opened the door. "Thank you for your excellent work, Mrs. Holland," I said, stepping into the hallway. "Now, if you'll join me, I'm starving. Let's go for a celebratory lunch. I was thinking Sienna's table. I hear the oysters are wonderful." I looked at my lawyer, a cool, calculating smile on my face. "I'm thinking of buying it." I walked out into the brilliant, unforgiving Denver sunshine, leaving Marcus Davies in the ruins of the life he had built, with the sudden, crushing knowledge that the too old woman he had discarded now owned his entire future. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. I'd love to see your comments and thoughts on Eliza's revenge. Please be sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories and like this video. You can also show your support by hitting the hype button, so this story can be heard by even more people.